Hello, listeners. We're back and we have a really great short podcast episode for you today. So, Laurel Boyven is back with me. Hi, Laurel.
Hi, Laurel.
How are
Thanks
you?
for having me again. I'm happy to be here.
I'm so glad you're here and sharing in this space with me. I feel like our voices together are hopefully a big invitation to listeners to really take this work seriously and to also enjoy the experience of doing this beautiful work and looking inwardly, even when it's scary.
I think that's so important. And it really ties in well with what we're going to talk about today because
Yeah.
doing this work is just so much more enjoyable and comes easily when you're doing it with other people and sharing that.
Yeah. So our topic today is getting support for this work. Yeah. And
Don't have to do it alone.
you don't have to do it alone, but you also can do it alone. And I know I've done a lot of work alone, which has been really beautiful, but even when it's been alone, I've felt very supported. And so we'll talk about that as well today too. So Laura, let's do each of us a quick rundown. If we go like historically from the beginning to, and just a quick blip. What kind of support have you received when you think about, or what kind of support, what has supported you? What have been the tools and things that have supported you along the way that come up to you for you right away? And we'll kind of just go through it that way.
Sure. I Journaling was the first. I mean, I've been journaling since I was 13 years old, so decades of journaling. That has been a big place for me to have support in doing the work.
Yeah.
I do a lot of reading. There's so many good authors and a lot of listening podcasts and audiobooks on doing inner work and self-discovery. Um, and then my energy practitioner probably is where I made the most, I'll say, the fastest incremental progress or the most progress. I saw some big leaps forward in my own self awareness and inner knowingness. He is a chiropractor and energy practitioner. Reiki, my curiosity led me to become a Reiki certified and practitioner. And doing self Reiki is something part of my practice. Yoga is another. And then I think the relationships in my life, as I've done on inner work, and I think our listeners will find this, that you start to attract people who are giving in a way of supporting you because they can see the results of your inner work. And that instills their own curiosity, perhaps. And you grow a support system by just doing the work. What,
Yeah.
what about you?
For me, if I go back to the beginning, I would say the beginning was definitely that first therapist. So again, having somebody who cared, who made a suggestion, and me trusting that that was for me, going ahead and doing therapy, although that therapist didn't really do a whole lot with me. I would say that was not a good therapy matchup. But he was the one who also introduced me to adult children of alcoholics. And I stayed in that group, and I went weekly for a year and a half. And that changed my life. Being in group, learning how to speak up in group, learning how to listen to other people's stories in group. And when they were telling a little bit of my story, how potent and healing that was. That was huge. Group work was huge right from the beginning. And then finding my therapist that really did help me a lot. So I was in therapy a second time, and that therapist was also my acupuncturist, my Tai Chi instructor, and learned so much in all of that. That also introduced me, was the beginning of being introduced to shamanic work, because he was also did some shamanic practicing work, and dabble. I learned a little bit in that. That was more Bantu shamanism, which didn't resonate quite as much with me. And then back into group work, I had a beautiful nudge from the universe, which I'll share another time on another show because this is a great story, but I won't get into it today, where I got involved in a women's center. that where I learned peer leadership. And in that peer leadership model, I learned more about reevaluation counseling, which is a peer model of counseling. And from there, I went on to do my master's work, which when I did my master's in counseling psychology was like a whole bunch of personal work as well. So that was just a deep dive into a lot of deep healing work because I did a lot of self reflection. There was journaling involved in that. There was a lot of applying what I was learning to my own experience and to others' experiences. And so this was like a lot of really big personal work. Definitely bibliotherapy. I cannot tell you. I know for me, when I found a book that resonated for me, it was like my world got tilted just a little bit. Everything shifted just a little bit.
Mm.
So when you start exploring the world of personal transformation and all that's out there, it's absolutely incredible to experience that. And then doing my own writing. My own writing was also very healing and transformational for me. I never thought of myself as a writer, never would have. If you had asked me many, many years ago, are you going to write a book? I would have laughed out loud in your face, literally. And here I have, and now I'm on my third and my fourth book. So it's you just never know also where this beautiful work is going to take you.
It's so true. And I left off two important things, and one of them is just so silly that I would leave it off. But um, I've worked with a number of coaches in the last 10 years, and
Mm,
having that safe space to do the work and being held in a safe space of trust, you know, confidence with someone else has been really, really good for me.
yeah.
Um, and as a coach myself, it's funny that I would leave that off because that may have contributed to the depth of the work that I've been able to do. And my self-coaching tools are big. I do a self-coaching almost every day now. I need it. But the other thing is my faith. It's that spiritual piece of for me, I have the external support, the internal knowingness, and then my faith that really does provide such a strong support system and guidance. Even
Mm.
if I don't know where my life is taking me, I know it's going to be okay.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. I will add to mine too, and mine would be I've worked with multiple energy practitioners, had the beautiful experience of that. And some of that came through doing shamanic work. My second experience of shamanic work was with Peruvian shamanism. And I actually went through the medicine wheel with my son, who was the instigator of doing that work. And he was in college at that point, and I was doing my master's degree just post master's work, just beginning as a therapist and doing a lot of addictions counseling work. And it was so beautifully adjunctive to that work. And also because I did that work and was really getting into energy medicine and had so much personal healing experience from that. When it came time to carry a license, I did all my work to carry a license as a licensed mental health counselor. I realized I couldn't really carry the license because I don't think I really, first of all, I didn't believe that I was just going to be working in a clinic for the rest of my life. And so why did I need a license? And I didn't believe in some of the practices of Western medicine in the mental health realm. And so I didn't want to support that in that way. And I also had such powerful healing from the energetic experiences that I really was dedicated to weaving that into my work and being able to
Mm.
talk about that openly and not feel like I was violating a license by sharing in ways that maybe Western medicine wouldn't yet endorse at that point. Because this was, 20 years ago now. So, this has been a big part of my path too. And over time, you were talking about having these relationships where you do this beautiful work, and that's so true. I think back to these widening circles with this different spaces of work where I've done the work and how I feel like literally I have this community that's, all over the United States, other places in the world, where I feel like these relationships are so beautiful and I know they hold me in my work, even when I'm not necessarily with them. It just, it becomes this energetic container for you always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as you were speaking, I thought in both of our stories and for our listeners, we've touched on so many different things, but the beauty of doing the work is each individual gets to choose what support system they need and what support system they want to create.
Yeah.
And ours are slightly different, although we have similarities, and you know, and our listeners may have similarities and differences, but there's so many opportunities for support.
Yeah, and they're growing all the time. I think that's one of the beauties of the feminine energy and the more dominant, feminine aspects rising in the world is there are more and more healing spaces to
Yeah.
be a part of. And I think for each of us, this is an exploration again, like discovering your intuition. You have to just get out there and start interacting with people and maybe getting an appointment, setting it up, and trusting, does this feel right for me? There are people out there that are doing the work that maybe aren't doing as deep work, and you want deeper work. So they're not going to resonate with you. There may be people that you just don't feel like they are a person of integrity because you're not feeling it. Trust that, just move on from there. There's so much out there to choose from. And we need to be careful, and trust what feels right for us.
Right. And I would suggest that even in places that you may not think, the support is there. And I would say, the healthcare system in the United States, this in universities or corporations, what I'm seeing is that there is more and more support for alternative um, practices and healing approaches and discovery methods in those settings. I mean, we talked in one episode previously about my having surgery, and it was a hospital in Boston, and they had a meditation program to prepare for surgery, and the program was called Prepare for Surgery, Heal Faster.
Mm.
And I would have never thought, here I am in a mainstream Boston hospital, that I would have had access to that opportunity to do my beautiful work in that setting.
Mm.
Phenomenal.
So phenomenal. Yeah, and meditation. Let's talk a little bit about meditation. And also, when you talked about faith, Laurel, it made me realize, my spiritual development and spiritual path has been so off the norm and so out of the usual because I was not raised with a religion. I wasn't raised with a faith. My parents didn't bring us to church, and my father, I felt like, was really invited us to each find our own personal path. Now, there was a point in my life in my 20s where I felt like there was a real void there. And I I went ahead and started exploring on my own and found it and found that, for me, all paths lead to the top, all paths go up to the top of the mountain. And so any religious experience or spiritual experience, if it's done with beautiful integrity and depth, and if we're honoring what we really feel about it, whether it's really resonating with us on the deepest level, that it can take us, into the depths of our being and to the heights of spiritual experience. And again, and we all have to find that out for ourselves. It
We
can't be given to us.
absolutely. And even when it might have been given to us,
You know.
we make it our own. And so, my faith, I have such strong faith, and my spiritual journey has been pretty much unique and personal for the last a few decades. But my I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school for 16 years. I did not get married in a Catholic church. I got married in a congregational church, right? And I haven't gone to church in decades.
Mm.
But when I was in college, we had to take theology, 8 semesters, and I took a theology elective called World Religions, and that opened my eyes. 5 major world religions, and they all had a similar foundation in this higher power.
Yeah.
And so, my faith in the goodness of the universe and the divine power in each and every one of us
Mm.
is just, I have this faith in universal energy,
Yeah.
um, which is not religious at all in my some people's eyes, right?
Yeah.
But we have to make it our own, and we have to know what gives us strength,
Yeah.
and that's part of the support. I
Right.
find support in the unknown.
Right. And I feel like I know I've worked with quite a few people where they have really a lot of inner conflict around the religion as they were given it and experienced it. And so, my invitation is always to work out that conflict, because what we do is we cast ourselves away from an opportunity of having faith and really finding what is the path or the alternative path or the modified path to that religious experience that will allow us to keep deepening. And when we stop, the conflict will stop us from going into the depths and really having it as our true foundation and
Mm,
a real structure that we can rely on. And so, for any listener who feels like they are conflicted about their religious experience or the religious teachings, is to go ahead and begin your own self-study and exploration to find that modified path that really allows you to embrace it in totality, or whatever version in totality, so that you can have that structure inside to rely on, because faith is big. We need to have certain things, concepts, precepts that we believe in that carry us through in those moments of crisis
yeah.
and difficulty. Yeah.
And the interesting thing that I love the word faith because sometimes it's a religious faith, right, into some god or being. But one of the terms we hear often is faith in humanity.
Mm,
And even without a specific religious faith, how incredible is it to live with faith in humanity,
mm,
right?
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I rely on that, the general faith, and my faith might be in myself, it might be in a higher power, it might be in humanity.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. And I have
Mhm.
such a beautiful faith in humanity. And this past year or two, where it's been difficult to have faith in humanity, I think, when we've looked at how much discourse there is out there and how ugly people can be and can act, how do we maintain a faith in humanity? And we have to find that balance, and that's where our faith brings us back into that space. Yeah.
And one of the ways I think about that, because that's a challenging question, it's the dilemma that we face with having faith in humanity. Um, when I do inner work, it's messy. There are dark, ugly spaces within it sometimes, and then there's victories that are so big. I want to convert everybody I know. And so when I think about, you know, the last few years and maybe the conflicts and all that's going on in the world, the disparity, I
Yeah.
think how incredible it is that perhaps the whole planet is doing inner work and it's messy right now, right? Just on on the verge of change
Yeah.
is messy, and that maybe that's my hopeful, right? That's my hopefulness that I carry with my faith. The combination of hope and faith keep me believing that we're on the verge of something good.
Yeah, we are in messy times. We are in, I know in Chinese, the Chinese symbol for crisis is also opportunity. The opportunity symbol is there. And so, whenever I come into personal crisis or in this time of feeling like we've been in and out of crisis lately, this is our opportunity, to grow, to change. And if we can see crisis as that and chaos as opportunity and a rearranging, like always
Oh,
think of when I walk in my house and it feels stale or it just looks like a mess, it's like, okay, let's clean this out. Let's make it new. It's like time for a refresh. And that's life. That's life.
Sure. And it ties in so nicely with, you know, finding support, right? And because just knowing that the messiness is part of the process and that not judging it, but finding support to be with it and be in it and find other people that you can depend on during those messy times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, good.
So, our invitation to listeners today is to begin to expand your support. One person, one experience, one book, one podcast, one coach, one therapist, one group, whatever, at a time, and allow yourself to explore, right? The invitation is to explore and with curiosity, just get out there and see what's available and what calls to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And a question I'd like to leave or suggestion with our listeners is um, where can you look for support that you may not expect it to be there, but you could be pleasantly surprised? Like as I mentioned before, in the hospital healthcare system, in places in your family, with your children and your husband, be bold, be brave, look for their support, ask for their support,
Yeah.
expect their support.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, right? And you never know what you're going to get back.
Oh,
And then one of the most beautiful things too is learn how to give support. When we can become a true support to other people, we begin to also understand what it is we want for support. So I think that's the other exploration that I would invite people into, do some writing or do some, kind of note taking for yourself. Like, what kind of support do you need right now that you're not getting? And how might you try to give that to see if then it will come back to you or open up to you? Yeah. Yeah.
I can't wait to hear back from our listeners if
I
the
know.
results they get from that.
I know. That's a good one,
That's
right?
a good one. I think I'm going to do that this week too.
Yeah, good. Well, I know you're off to vacation. Have a wonderful vacation, Laurel. I'll see you
Thank
when you
you.
get back.
Wonderful. Thanks for inviting me to be with you. As always, I enjoy every minute of it.
I do too. I do too. And thanks, listeners, for being with us. Send in your questions, send in your comments, your thoughts. We're here for you.
Bye bye.
Bye.